Hello everybody, welcome back. This is my first video after a little while. Took a brief hiatus. My girlfriend and I went to Disney World for the whole week last week, so that's why I didn't see anything put out. But today, I wanted to go ahead and put out one of my favorite decks. Now, the channel itself has featured lots of combo oriented things, but at the heart, I'm actually a control player, and this is a deck that I really kind of speaks to that, and so I'll kind of give you my version of it. It happens to be one of the best decks of this format. You could make this deck, go to locals, and very easily take it down, and some of you could probably even go to some regionals and take that down too. So let's get right into it. Stick around, because at the end I'll talk about some budget alternatives and some options for you. So as it is right now, it's regional ready. So we've got 3 Ash Blossom, 2 Ghost Ogre. I'm just going to kind of go right through it and explain the choices kind of at the end. So it's Altergeist. If you read the title, you know that. 1 Conqueror, 2 Silkidus, 3 Meliseek, 3 Marionetter, and 3 Multi-Faker. This is very standard. These particular ratios, definitely want to go with the Altergeist specifically. The one thing that a lot of people are up in the air about is Conqueror, but it is a fantastic card. It adds that extra layer of protection that this deck needs when it's not in control to get it to the point where it can start to get on a roll and start to get to where it needs to go. Also, combos with Silkidus is really good. They attack, you can block the attack, negate it, bounce it back. It's just a fantastic all-around card. That is it for the monsters. This deck is mainly monsters and traps, but I'm going to go very quickly over the small amount of spells that it plays. So first and foremost, it plays 2 Pot of Desires, fantastic card, and 3 Secret Village of the Spellcasters. This deck has a really good matchup against any kind of combo deck. It has a really good ability to stop whatever the deck is doing, and then continue to make sure that it doesn't do that for the rest of the game. But it struggles in things like the mirror match unless you really know what you're doing, and Sky Striker sometimes. So this deck is, this card right here is something that completely shuts that down. Fantastic card. It's essentially a win button. That is it for the spells. The traps, we got quite a few. Imperial Order, Solemn Judgment, 3 Solemn Strike, 3 Infinite Impermanence. Again, I'll go over budget options a little bit later. My personal favorite card in the whole deck is 3 Mind Crush. For the Altergeist cards, you got 3 Personal Spoofing, 2 Protocol, 2 Manifestation. Some decks you see playing 2 Spoofing. I really like it because it's a makes 6 copies of Multi-Faker, which is the card that you want to see. The reason people play 2 is because usually when you see it once, you really don't want to see another copy of it. So people play 2 to see it sometimes, but not always. This guarantees that you always see it, but I think that if you get Multi-Faker up and going, then you should be winning the game. So I feel like it's super important to have. Mind Crush is fantastic. It's a trap card that is chainable. On top of that, you get to take out cards from your opponent's hand that could potentially be devastating for you. This deck has a really bad, I guess you'd call it a matchup. It has a bad matchup against evenly matched, and so this is a great way to not only counteract that, but also to strengthen the other matchups in the meta. Just overall, fantastic card. That is everything in the main deck. Cool part about Altergeist is that the extra deck is really easy. Essentially, you have 3 Hextia. I play the Banshee, or Prime Banshee. You don't really have to do that. Then I go ahead with the Nightmares, so Phoenix, Cerberus, and Unicorn. I play Ningirsu, so that you have a non-targeting out to things that are really hard for you to out. Borload is the same thing. You could do a Boral Sword if you really wanted to, but I have something else in the extra deck that takes the place of that. And if you've been watching my videos, you know why I don't have a Boral Sword. Underclock Taker is a generic Link 2. Some decks are playing Wee Witch's Apprentice, but I like the Underclock Taker because it's generic, and not everything in the deck is dark. Linkuriboh, fantastic card. Essentially, if you wanted to boil the entire extra deck down to just a couple cards that are quote-unquote necessary, these 4 cards right here, basically that's all you need. Everything else kind of filler. That's what makes this deck really great for not only budget players, but people who like to kind of express themselves with this deck. And that's kind of what I've done with this extra deck. The deck has trouble versus really big things. So what I decided to do is I decided to go ahead and play the Utopia package. Gets over really big monsters. Tornado Dragon, you'll notice that the main deck is not playing the trap card that destroys 2 Heavy Storm Duster. So just playing this for extra back row hate, and then Abyss Dweller for graveyard type decks. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'd be going over a couple of budget alternatives. So what are the cards that are not budget friendly in this deck? Well, mainly you have these guys and the hand traps. The hand traps luckily have become more accessible to a wide array of people. The hand traps can basically be replaced with almost any other hand trap that you can get your hands on. Things like Effect Veiler, Droll Mockbird, all of those are really, really good replacements for these. Effect Veiler just came out in a structure deck, I believe, which you can get your hands on it super easy now. So you can replace it with that. Another card that I really like is Gamma. There it is. Gamma is a really great card. I think that the better card than that to play in the playstyle is actually Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherry. This is because this deck plays so much, there has so much space in the extra deck that you could pretty much do whatever you want with it. You can actually load up that extra deck with a whole bunch of things that you're having trouble with, and you can actually main deck that. You shouldn't have to be scared of main decking at Cherries. So those are kind of the alternatives for the hand traps, just more budget-friendly hand traps. This deck is great in the sense that sometimes you don't even have to play hand traps. In fact, that's what I'll go over now with the other trap cards that this deck can play. I'll put those away. So, what can we replace the impermanences with? Well, it works mainly as a hand trap that triggers everything else in the deck. But there are a few things that you can replace it with. You have an extra Solemn spot. This deck does really good with control, and so you can go ahead and replace it with that. You've got Heavy Storm Duster, which you could replace that with in the main deck. This strengthens your mirror match as well as strengthens your Sky Striker matchup. Because the deck is playing Secret Village of the Spellcasters, this might not be completely necessary, but if you have a meta in which you're going to go through a lot of mirror matches, then this could be a good idea for you. This deck can play Rivalry really well. If you have a lot of combo decks in your area, feel free to actually throw that right in the main deck. Card is fantastic, and you can catch all sorts of players off guard with it. Another one that you can catch people off guard with is Torrential Tribute. You activate, so if your opponent summons a monster and you activate your Torrential Tribute, blows up the board and your Multi-Faker starts in a new chain, so it's essentially summoning by itself, and it's a mandatory effect, so it has to summon itself, and then you get that special summon. So it works as a board wipe, as well as a trigger for your Multi-Faker. So your Multi-Faker is coming out, not only summoning a monster, but also clearing the board, which is really cool. Now, if you guys are worried about running spell cards, then the other spell card you can play is Pot of Duality. Early versions of this deck from Japan started to play 2 Duality, 2 Desires. Desires is just a much better card, and Duality doesn't add a whole lot to the deck in terms of consistency because everything is pretty much redundant in this deck. But if you want to go ahead and play 2 Duality and 2 Desires, that would be kind of the ideal ratio. Of all of these, what do I recommend? Well, I feel like the strongest contenders to be replacing these expensive cards with would be first and foremost Rivalry. This gets over lots and lots of different decks. Second, Heavy Storm Duster. And then third, I would go ahead and rate it with Pot of Duality. You can kind of fill these in however else you want. Honorable mention would be Lost Wind. A lot of decks, or some decks are playing that. I think it's all right. It's a recurable trap card and does great against some matchups. But go ahead, let me know what you think of this deck. I also have a Paleozoic deck that I like to play. It's another control deck, and I get that the channel has mostly been about combo decks, but I am a control player, so I would love to get more into that and really just explore every type of deck. So if you guys have a particular deck that you have questions about, let me know, and I can get my hands on those cards, and I can go ahead and talk about the nuances of the deck like I have here. All right, any questions, put them in the comments, and I look forward to seeing it.